Hey, good morning, folks. It's Pastor Steven here with another No Frills Daily Devotional. Thank you so much for tracking with me. Today's topic is called No Boundaries. And it's along the lines of my previous video that I just did called Jesus, the Bad Roommate. And so I hope you watched that video. If you haven't, make sure that you check that one out for me, please. And in that video, it was just about how, we like Jesus to be a part of our lives, but we like to invite him in as long as he doesn't mess with our stuff, okay? But that's not the gospel, okay? The gospel, when Jesus died on the cross, okay, when he died on the cross, his goal wasn't to just simply coexist, okay, with us, right? Instead, when he died on the cross, it was an invitation. It was an invitation that he offered to us to experience the life that he has for us, okay? His life, okay? And so I want to kind of stay on that track, actually. And I'm going to take you to, this is the book of Ephesians. And I'm going to be reading in chapter 3. And I'm going to read verses 16 through 19. To you today. And so this is Paul writing, and he says this. He's writing this letter to the Ephesian church. I pray that out of his glorious riches, he's talking about Jesus here, he may strengthen you with power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. Okay, pause there for just a second. This idea of where do we get the language of Jesus coming into our hearts, right? It's this verse right here. That's Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power, together with all the saints, to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. And what's Paul saying here? Paul's saying that same concept that I just got done teaching about in the previous video, about how when Jesus comes into our life, he doesn't want to be just this quiet guy in the corner who's just there when you need him, right? When we invite him in, it's an invitation of surrendering my life for his life. Okay, the goal of the gospel, remember, isn't that I accept Jesus into my life. It's that I've been accepted into his life. Okay, and so this idea of fullness that Paul is talking about here in verse 19 of Ephesians chapter 3 is where I kind of want to land for a little bit on this idea of no boundaries. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about roommate number 2 of mine in college. And my roommate number 2 was a very, very messy person. And if you know me, you know that I'm kind of a type A personality, kind of a perfectionist, kind of like things to be neat and organized, whatever, okay? And so, except for obviously my hair on these daily devotionals, which is not neat and organized by any means, okay? And so, but when you would have walked into my room my second year of college, you would have seen Scott's side of the room, and you would have seen Steven's side of the room, and you would have seen this clear difference between those two sides of the room, okay? And so, oh my goodness, one of my favorite stories was he used to like to eat this Dinty Moore beef stew, and he would cook it in this bowl in our little micro fridge thing that we had. And he would eat part of it, but then whatever he didn't finish would just sit in his bowl on his desk for just an obscene amount of time. And it would just get so moldy and gross and disgusting. And he didn't do anything about it, whatever. And so anyway, so you would have seen this clear delineation between his life and my life, right? Or this demarcation, I guess, is a better word to use. Okay. I would argue in the gospel that there's no boundaries, okay? There's no, here's my life and here's Jesus's life, Okay, here's my life, but here's the little piece or the little portion that I'm going to surrender to God. In our church, we talk about the sacred versus secular divide, and that there's no sacred or secular divide in the gospel. In the gospel, again, it's an invitation for me to surrender my life to take on the life that Jesus has called me to. The gospel is an invitation for us to surrender our lives, okay, to Jesus, to trade my life for his. And so what Paul is trying to talk about here in Ephesians, and what I'm trying to get at here, is we got to get rid of these boundaries where we just give Jesus this little piece, and you can live in this little part of my heart, Jesus, okay? But as long as you don't get over into these other parts of my life. And Jesus isn't going to be good with that kind of boundary, okay? If you truly want him in your life, he's going to want to take over every aspect of your life. He's not going to obey these boundaries that you try to have for him. I thought about it like as a quilt, okay? Was an analogy that I thought of where think about a quilt as all these little pieces that are sewn together on this large backdrop, right? And we'd like to think, even though we're that one of those little pieces of the quilt, we'd like to think that when we invite Jesus in, that we're the backdrop and he's one of the little pieces. That's not the gospel. The gospel is he's the backdrop. We're one of the little pieces that have been invited in to take part in his life. And so I'm just going to encourage you today, okay? If you've been trying to set boundaries for Jesus in your heart, if you've been wanting him to be part of your life, but as long as he plays nice, right? As long as he doesn't mess with your stuff, that's not the gospel. The gospel is an invitation to trade your life for his. And I'm going to keep encouraging you that his life is the best life for you. Hey, you guys, thanks so much for tracking with me today. Have an awesome, awesome, awesome day, you guys. God bless.